Tony mentioned to me after the photo had come out. He said, "Oh yeah, I didn't want to tell you this before, but I met with Shane McMahon." I was like, I didn't say this, but I was like, yeah, I know. The picture was everywhere.
I'm a champion!
Delighted to be joined in the Gorilla Position studio today by one of the greatest pro wrestlers on the face of the planet. How do you like that?
Yeah, it's very nice. Yeah, it's very nice. But nice isn't. I tell people this all the time. Nice isn't the same thing as kind, right?
Okay.
Kind is treating people like kin, like that you love them, and sometimes that requires doing hard things. Nice is. The base word for nice has something to do with being stupid. And I don't remember exactly what it is, but it's like, okay. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you've ruined my intro now.
Right, yeah, sorry.
And,
That's what I do.
The cat's out of the bag.
That's what I do.
But anyway, we are, I mean, as you can tell by the paraphernalia in the studio, we're predominantly a WWE show. But if there's anyone who crosses over from AEW and has been such a cornerstone of both AEW and WWE, it is you, Mr. Bryan Danielson. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So you've been very kind. You've come basically straight from the airport, flying in from the US to here, to our studio here in central London. What are you doing here this week? Are you promoting
Yeah,
All
I'm
In?
promoting All In.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's my main focus, and I'm really only here. So today I landed at 1:30ish. I'll do media all day tomorrow, and then I'll fly out early Tuesday morning.
Wow.
Yeah.
Rock and roll lifestyle.
Yeah. All the partying, right? All the partying in the world.
So AEW All In, Wembley Stadium, Sunday, 25th of August. Tickets are still available, AEWTix.com and Live Nation UK. You obviously missed Wembley Stadium last year, the big All In show, the first All In show. Huge success for AEW. Is Wembley a bit of a bucket list thing for you?
Yeah, I'm part of a generation of wrestlers. And some of the younger guys might not think of it like this, but we idolized that 92 SummerSlam, right? And not only was it like, at that point you have to think I'm 11 years old, right? And hadn't really, you see British Bulldog and Bret Hart in the main event, and it's like this all-time classic, and that's just etched in your brain. You know what I mean? And I watched that match as a teenager probably 30, 40 times. You know what I mean? And so it's like it's kind of iconic in even in the United States as far as Wembley Stadium. That moment is iconic.
I know. Obviously, you've mentioned Wembley. You're looking forward to that one. You've got to wrestle in Tokyo Dome this year, Arena Mexico as well. What's been your favorite kind of these traditional arenas for wrestling?
Oh, so I'd wrestled actually in the Tokyo Dome before.
Okay.
So I kind of knew the lay of the land as far as the Tokyo Dome. I'd never been in like a big match at the Tokyo Dome. I was always in like a juniors 6-man tag or an 8-man tag or whatever, but it's still cool. But being able to wrestle Okada in the Tokyo Dome, like that was super cool. But Arena Mexico was unlike anything I've ever. It's I talk a lot about how much I love wrestling at Butlins, right? I was actually the guy who picked me up from the airport. He was a wrestling fan, and he was like, and he asked me if not that I'd ever been to the UK, but how much time I'd spent here or whatever. And I said, I spent a lot of time here just doing the Butlins loops for 6 months in 2003 and all that kind of stuff. But it's crazy because the Butlins fans, they were great.
So
right?
into it.
So into it.
Yeah.
And Arena Mexico, not that it was a Butlins crowd, but it felt like, oh man, this is that energy, but sold out, And the first one I did 2 at Arena Mexico. And the first one was sold out. The next one was just shy of a sellout, but it was a singles match against Blue Panther, who's my favorite luchador. And it was just kind of a dream come true. The whole thing just felt surreal.
What was the smallest crowd you ever wrestled in front of at Butlins? Because I remember talking to William Regal, and he was like, he performed to the cleaner and someone working behind the bar.
Yeah.
And they put on 15 matches to 2 people.
So we didn't do that at Butlins. By the time I was at Butlins, we didn't have that. But we did a holiday camp near Bognor Regis called Celsi, right? And it's like it started a little. They started the wrestling run before a lot of people would get to Chelsea. And so like the first couple weeks at Chelsea, it was like that. There's 4 people in the crowd, and they're just kind of watching like, what am I doing here? So, and then you'd still like the time. How they did it was they booked it for time. So they had they told Brian Dixon that, okay, this has to fill up an hour and a half. Well, there would only be 2 matches on that show. Yeah. So you'd had to go out there and wrestle in front of 4 people for a long time, right? It's like, it was, but it was a lot of fun, a really good learning experience, and gets you just more comfortable, I don't know, being in spandex underwear in front of strangers. So
and you actually said you enjoyed wrestling in front of no one during the pandemic, right?
Oh, I loved it.
Why?
I loved it. It was because it's different, right? It's so different. And it wasn't the idea that I'm doing it in front of no one. It's the idea that the medium has changed, right? So for example, you guys are doing a podcast. The medium changes a little bit once you incorporate video. Right? So if people are only exclusively listening to this, that's a different animal than if they're just watching it and watching us talk. Likewise, I liken it to the difference between theater and cinema, right? What we traditionally do in pro wrestling is more like theater, but what we had to do during the pandemic is cinema. And my realization was that not many people are changing. Not many people are realizing that there needs to be this change here, this change in adaptation. And I thought I was very proud, and I thought that I was one of the best people at adapting to that. You have to keep in mind, Roman Reigns was out during that time. When Roman came back, I was like, he got it. He understood the benefits. Because it's a trade-off. You lose some things, but you gain some things. He understood the trade-offs, and the direction he went was genius. And I don't know, because I didn't really get a chance to talk to him much during that time period. But I'd be interested to see if he was sitting at home and watching it, going like, "This isn't working. What could work is something like this."
Well, Jey Uso was another one. We interviewed him, and he was saying he realized he had to really subtly perform to the camera. It wasn't about the big gestures anymore. It was about the more subtle acting and things on stage. It's fascinating.
Well, I forget who exactly it was. I'm going to say it's Baron Corbin because I like Baron Corbin, and I feel like if he hears this and he didn't do it, he's not going to get mad at me because I like him, right? And I'm just putting it straight up forward that I like Baron Corbin. But it was him or somebody else. They did something, and it was our first taping. In front of nobody at the Performance Center, and he goes, "Who's the man?" and looks at the people. I'm just like,
looks at the chairs.
I was just like, that doesn't really work here.
Yeah, you need to switch things up a bit.
Yeah.
Oh, that's excellent.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I really focused on. I actually leaned into some of the old British wrestling because one of the things that they don't get a lot of credit for, a lot of people realize that old British wrestling is very technical and that sort of thing, but the sounds and the physicality of it, because the crowds weren't going necessarily wild and the announcer was very subdued and he wouldn't talk like that, but you would actually physically hear that when they grab and all that kind of stuff. And I thought oh, there's a real opportunity to do that. And me and William Regal were talking about it, and he would send me videos and stuff like that of him doing stuff to his son and be like, yeah, you could do this, and and I was just like, whoa, that's great, so.
You mentioned trade-offs. The main story right now is the trade-off that, wrestling, your love and family man, and what you've promised your daughter, this retirement, now that she's age 7. That's all playing out right now, and that's obviously yourself, Swerve Strickland, main event of All In. Is this retirement, an actual retirement? Is it a quote-unquote pro wrestling retirement? Never say never. Is Bryan Danielson done?
So if I lose, I'm done. Done. And, for years and years, I thought, I would never retire again. Never retire in the sense of saying, I'm going to stop doing this. But I've come to the point, this last year has been really hard on me physically. So it's I wrestled MJF at our pay-per-view called Revolution in an Iron Man match. I tore my labrum, and then before that, I had some herniated discs in my lower back, and I've never really had lower back issues, despite all the stuff that I've done. And then so I was out for that. My first singles match back, I wrestled Okada. then I break my arm, then I come back, I'm back for a month, and I fracture my orbital bone in 2 spots. And it's like, and you know, and those things are hard, and it's just like, okay. But then it's also like with my broken arm, my son, who just turned 4 on Thursday, he's wild. He's wild. And there's a good chance that, like, for example, I'm probably, sooner rather than later, I'm probably going to have to get neck surgery. But when I broke my arm, he can't understand, hey, leave this arm alone.
Yeah.
And like, he loves wrestling with daddy. Like, he just jumps on me all over the place, and he has so much energy, and it's great. I fear, because I know what happened with my last neck surgery, what the recovery process is like. I fear being around my son after that neck surgery, right? So it's just like these ideas and these things that I got hurt on. For example, when I fractured my orbital bone or when I broke my arm, they're not these dangerous things that you would think like, oh, I should have stayed away from this. I fractured my orbital bone when Andrade grabbed a wrist lock.
Wow.
It was just as he grabbed it, his elbow just elbowed me right in the eye and fractured it in 2 spots, right? You know, you would think, okay, in my 60s and 70s, I could easily, you watch Johnny Saint wrestle, and you know, and he wrestled older, and you grab a wrist lock, and you know, you think it's not going to be an issue. Zack Sabre grabs a wrist lock, and he did it to my arm that was the broken arm. And I was like, oh my gosh, this hurts so bad. Like, why is this happening? Anyways, but it shouldn't be that thing that's destroying you. And yet, there I was, having to wear 6 weeks where I couldn't even fly, you know, like all that kind of stuff. And so, you know, it's getting to the point, what's the trade-off here as far as what's, like, and I've also put my body through a lot. And so what kind of trade-offs am I doing here as far as like, okay, I enjoy doing this thing, but at the end of the day, my son is young. And when he turned, like the first time I tried my dad, I was probably like 15. And when my dad was probably 35, no, probably, right around 40. Probably right around the age I am now. Mm-hmm. If he tried me at 15 now, I'd smash him, right? But I'm going to be like in my 50s. Dude, when he tries me, I've still got to be able to squash him. I just can't. You just can't. You can't have your son. You can't have him take you down when he's 15. It's got to be a little bit older than that, I think.
So usually when wrestlers say they're going to retire, it quite often doesn't happen. Mm-hmm. Would this really be it for you?
Yeah.
If you lost?
Yeah.
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 You're quite serious about that?
Yep. Yeah. I'm really walking back this idea of wrestling forever. I just don't think I can do it, you know? And especially the style of, because this is what's kind of happened. Our doctors have said, okay, we clear you to wrestle like this kind of wrestling, and I can't stop myself from doing this kind of wrestling. Yeah. And so I always thought like, oh, I'd be able to go out there and just do sunset flip, pull my pants down. Oh, and you can't, and then you go around like, oh, and people are pointing like, your butt's out. And I'm like, no, it's not. And you're walking around with your butt out for 5 minutes or whatever it is. Like, I thought, I'd be very comfortable doing stuff like that. And, it turns out that's not what I want. You know what I mean? And the stuff that I think I want to do. And now I've found so many other things now that fulfill me, right? There's the family aspect of it, but there's also, even within the realm of wrestling, helping younger talent, helping with creative, some of those kinds of things. Like, I've really enjoyed that. And it gives me, and I guess I don't really crave, and I never really craved being in the spotlight. And I think the idea of exiting out of that sounds really, really nice.
And I'm guessing with pro wrestling, especially your kind of style, is not the kind of thing you can do sporadically.
No,
right?
No, and yeah, there's also the training piece of it, because I train really hard, and just so I can, and not that I train really hard. I do train hard, but it takes so much time, because a workout just isn't a workout. And Bree jokes with me about this all the time. Oh, your workouts take an hour and a half, but half of it is warming up, right? I'm warming up because I'm so old. And not that I'm so old. It's not the age number. It's what I've put my body through. So now I have to do this, and it takes me 30 minutes before I even start my workout. And then post-workout, if I don't want to feel like trash the next day, it takes me another 20 to 30 minutes. So that in itself is an hour. And then my workout is 45 minutes. So then it's like this nearly 2-hour saga every day of doing these workouts. So.
Yeah.
You've mentioned creative and, having your hands in other bits and bobs. And we've heard, I guess, through the grapevine that you're part of a disciplinary committee there. Is there any other kind of hats you wear in AEW or hats you're going to wear maybe post-retirement?
So I don't know, because I don't know what that looks like. So like kind of how it looks now is I help with creative a little bit. And what that usually looks like, it's not necessarily like a formal creative meeting or anything like that. Tony will call me and run some ideas past me, or he'll say like, hey, I was thinking of this. Do you have any ideas for this or something like that? But that's haphazard. It could happen. It could happen 3 times in a week. It could not happen at all for 3 weeks, right? That sort of thing. So I don't really know what that part of it will look like. I think it's just going to kind of have to evolve naturally and with whatever my comfort level is and their comfort level is, as far as, because I don't want to travel very much. So that's another piece of the wrestling puzzle as far as physically. I think a lot of wrestlers will tell you this. Sometimes the travel hurts your body more than the actual wrestling, and so it's like, it's just the doing it, all the time and that sort of thing. So we're just going to have to find some sort of compromise as far as what they would like me to do and what I would be willing to do. And if that isn't, and if it turns out to not be anything, that's okay too. You know what I mean? And if it turns out to be something where it's just like, I'll always be available on the phone if Tony just wants to call me, right, and run some ideas past me. I mean, I'm not going to charge, like, I'm not going to give you a fee for that. You know what I mean? Yeah. And like a lawyer, but that's not a bad gig, right? You know what I mean? Where you can charge
an hourly charge.
Well, I think they can cut it down to 15 minutes, like every 15 minutes. So if you're on it an hour and 15 minutes, they don't charge you an hour. They charge you maybe an hour and 30 or whatever it is. So,
we're in the wrong business.
Yeah.
Talk to us about your AEW run. How has it been over the last few years? Did it sort of meet expectations? You've obviously had some incredible matches, some dream matches for you. But yeah, how's it been? Because obviously we've heard from the likes of CM Punk, who talks about the differences between now he's back in WWE and what he experienced there. What's your take on the differences between the two?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of differences, and the idea of even what the priorities are, that sort of thing. This has been the most fun I've ever had these last 3 years. Part of that is because of how AEW is focused on the wrestling. But part of it is also just my mental take on wrestling now. It's very different than when pretty much any time in my career, I'm literally doing it for fun, right? And so I do it, I enjoy it, I love it. What's been frustrating for me is the injuries, because I've never had, I was kind of labeled as injury prone in WWE, But I always thought that wasn't accurate. My perception is that's not accurate, because I went through my entire career until WrestleMania 30 without having a single surgery other than, when they did the laser surgery for my retina. But I was back in 3 weeks after that. You know what I mean? No major surgeries until 2014. So that's 15 years of wrestling. And then I was back for a couple months, and then because of my history of concussions, I was forced to retire. So then it becomes labeled that you're injury prone. And I never thought of myself as that. And then I come to AEW, and boy, have I been injury prone. So it's like, it's just one of those things. So there's those kinds of things. There's like anything else, there's positives and negatives on both sides. And especially with AEW being a newer company, they don't necessarily have the infrastructure for some of the things, right, that you expect in WWE. So, for example, WWE, you get to the building, you go straight to talent relations, or at least when I was there, things have probably changed a decent amount since I've been there, so I don't know. I don't want to speak to exactly how things work.
Of course.
But you go to talent relations. Talent relations tells you, okay, this is what we've got scheduled for you for the week. This, and this. And then and sometimes when I was there, you wouldn't know what you were doing till late in the day or whatever it is. But it's like, there's this internal structure that we don't necessarily have yet at AEW, in the sense of like, you don't necessarily check in with talent relations when you first get in there and tell you like, you're doing this media interview, this media interview, this media interview, this media interview. We need you to sign these tops cards. We need you to do this, that, and whatever. That kind of stuff isn't necessarily happening. And even the process with like the writers and that sort of thing within WWE, it's just a more structured, formalized format within the WWE versus, at AEW. And so one of the big things that I've loved about AEW is that we're a TV company essentially. So we just do the TV. And what that's allowed me to do is spend more time at home with my family. I also love the creative freedom and the ability to do some of these things that I wasn't able to do before. So there's just some trade-offs there. And one of the things that I love about being in AEW is it feels like we're doing good by participating in this newer company, creating a second brand, because that's better for everybody, like every single wrestler, whether it's me, the people in AEW, or even the people in WWE who are getting higher salaries because it exists.
Yeah.
So
There's been so many changes in WWE since you left. Like you mentioned, AEW just being a TV company, WWE is now doing less live events than it did when you were there. Also, it feels like they have a lot more creative freedom because of Triple H being in charge rather than Vince. Is there any part of you that regrets leaving when you did?
Oh, no, not at all.
No?
Yeah. No,
like if things had changed but when you were still there, would you have stayed on?
No, I think how I view it is, obviously things have changed for the better there, substantially. And so, but how I view it is, one, I've had an incredible time doing what I'm doing. And there are a lot of people who, and I think I'm one of these people who prefer the style in AEW that's more wrestling focused, that's more, as opposed to the drama focused or whatever it is. But I like the idea that there's an alternative. And one of the things that I've really, when I put thought into what I wanted to do as far as leaving WWE, I never was somebody who disliked WWE. And I've tried not to say anything bad about them because I really enjoyed my time there, and I enjoy the people that I worked with, and the people that are there are still my friends and all that kind of stuff. But one of the things that I've really wanted is to participate in this thing that makes the wrestling industry better for everybody involved. Mm-hmm. And I think having AEW, even just the fact that AEW exists, is much better for all of us.
100%.
So
100%.
So yeah, and I also I'm preferential to the style. I like the style a little bit more. So
I don't want to speak for you, but let us in on what that must have felt like 2019 times. There's this buzz from the indies, this new companies coming in. I guess you yourself, the boys are watching it and thinking, is this a bit of me? Is that how you felt? Like, I like this. I want to kind of test myself over there.
Yeah, and and there was also this part of me, that wanted to push myself to be, because the style at AEW is a little bit more physical, right? And was more in tune with kind of the stuff that I really enjoyed doing when I was younger. And so, and I also felt like I wanted to change my role a little bit. Like now I'm doing some of the Yes Chants, like here or there, but I don't do it very much. Mm-hmm. But I was very like put into this thing, and I get it. That's what people wanted, out of the Daniel Bryan character. They wanted the yes, and they wanted the underdog babyface, and they wanted it. But I want like an actor who gets typecast as a certain thing, even if they're really good at it. They want to try other things, right? And that and that's my whole. My mind wants to try 10 zillion different things in this life. We get like this one life, and like to just do the one thing. I think there's value in just doing the one thing, but I think there's also value in trying a bunch of different things and testing yourself to see, like even at an older age, testing yourself to see what you can still do. I mean, I've been really impressed with Adam Copeland since he's come to AEW, because he tries a new thing every match, and unfortunately, the last one he broke his leg. So
didn't work out for him.
Yeah.
Shame he tried that one.
Yeah. So it's like but I think as performers, as we get older, we still want to push our own physical boundaries as far as like I don't want to feel like, okay, I can't do this because I'm 43 or whatever. But the reality is, should I do this? I'm 43. So, it's always a back and forth.
But you talking about style of pro wrestling, the style you kind of like, and the art form of it. I'm really interested in your opinion on this. Bret Hart always, who I consider one of the best pro wrestlers ever, always speaks about how it's an art form. The guys should go out there and protect each other. And make it look like a real fight. And then you have people in AEW, for example, Darby Allin, who will do these outrageous stunts, put his body, dare say his life on the line, sometimes doing these crazy things where he's legitimately getting hurt. And you're someone that likes working really snug, and and you said one of the reasons you wanted to leave WWE was because you wanted to bleed.
Yeah.
So I'm just interested on your opinion on the sort of the art form of pro wrestling and what that means.
Yeah. So I think and everybody has different takes on this. I think hitting people hard in safe places is 100% okay. And but I'm also somebody. So if you were to interview Randy Orton, right? So if you were to interview Mark Henry, right? If you were to interview Mark Henry, and he would say something like, Brian, I've never been kicked harder than when Brian kicks me in the chest, right? He would say that. Wrestling Randy, but Mark kind of embraces that physicality, and and Randy Orton, that's not necessarily his favorite thing.
Yeah.
So when I'm wrestling Randy, I don't do that. When I wrestled with Sheamus, we beat the hell out of each other. When I'm wrestling, let me see, when I wrestled Christian Cage in AEW, it wasn't like that at all, right? You switch, like the ability to switch these things, but also knowing, my mentor, William Regal, the way that he does some things is super light, but when he hits you with an uppercut, he hits you with an uppercut, right? But it's just super safe. And you don't, you'll, like, it literally, he says Dave Taylor's uppercuts were better as far as, like, stronger. Like, Dave Taylor could, like, knock somebody backwards, that sort of thing. But I haven't experienced that from Dave Taylor. But when William Regal does it, I mean, he rocks you, right? But you don't leave the match feeling... it's not like you can't do it the next day, right? So I think that's the thing. One of the things that, and I worry about this across both companies, and is the idea of like joints and all that kind of stuff, because there's more risk, from a joint perspective on all these things. I mean, you look at like when I was in WWE, John Cena tore his pec, I think giving a hip toss, and but there's these more acrobatics, and as people get older, I worry about that. Another thing I worry about, because it happened to my sister-in-law, is I'm not sure, and I hope that it seems with women's wrestling getting more athletic, their necks aren't as naturally strong as ours are. Like you look at the Japanese women, and they do these incredible, insane things. But the Japanese, during their training system, they train their necks a ton. And one of the things that, as the women started doing more of like a physical style, I don't know how many of them are training their necks in a way so that their necks don't get hurt as much, right? And so those are just things that I have across the board in wrestling. And when you look across the board in wrestling, everybody's doing more physical things, and so that's not limited to AEW. I will say this about Darby Allin: one, he's crazy, but two, he there's a magician quality about him, because he trained. I don't want to give away too much. For as dangerous as the stuff looks, he's about as safe as you could be with it, and and he was. And he was trained by Buddy Wayne, right? And Buddy Wayne is from the Pacific Northwest, kind of where I'm from. He's like a worker's worker. Like, bro, like he was like, if you like, he would chop you hard. Yeah. But if you hit him with something too hard, you'd be like, whoa, brother, what are you doing? You know what I mean? Like that sort of thing. So I, Darby's a real magician that I've been like. He has said that he'd wanted to do some things, and I was like, oh my gosh, there's no way to do that safe. And then he explained it to me, and I was like, oh, like I have never thought of that, but my mind doesn't work like that. So,
Okay. Is John Moxley a magician as well?
I don't know. He's something. He's something else. Yeah. He's something else.
Yeah.
Upon your return from the first retirement, you were paired. Well, you were general manager. And you were working alongside Shane McMahon. And recent times, we've seen Shane McMahon pictured with Tony Khan. Don't know what's happening there, but are you open to working with Shane McMahon again in AEW?
I mean, I'm open to working with anybody. I don't have beef with anybody. So yeah, 100%.
And also, that was a polite way of saying what is happening with Shane McMahon.
So if I knew, I would not tell you. 2, I don't know. so it was interesting because Tony mentioned to me after the photo had come out. He said, "Oh yeah, I didn't want to tell you this before, but I met with Shane McMahon." I was like, I didn't say this, but I was like, "Yeah, I know." The picture was everywhere, and so
I've got a phone.
yeah. Although, but I mean, to be fair, I'm not aware of a lot of things because I don't go on Twitter and I don't go on social media and all that kind of stuff. So yeah.
But it raises an interesting point because you say about how there's an alternative with AEW. And I totally agree, and it's given hundreds of other people jobs in the industry, which is amazing. There is an argument to say so many ex-WWE talents like yourself go to AEW. Do you think that's a good or a bad thing?
So it depends on the person, right? And it depends on their attitude and what they want to contribute, right? And I think that's I think that's the if you come in with the idea of I used to be a WWE person and now I'm coming here and none of these people have really made it or none of these people really know what's going on, then that's not a great attitude to have. If you come and this is how I think of things. I don't understand pro wrestling anymore.
What do you mean?
I'm just telling you right now. I don't understand what pro wrestling is. I don't know what fans want. I know
That's a good point.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know that when I go out there and do something, fans enjoy it, but I don't know why. Other than you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So, for example, if I were 18 right now, and I were training myself to be a wrestler, I wouldn't really know what to say because there's so many like the. One of my friends, I'm not on the internet a lot, but one of my friends, he sent me this review of my match. I wrestled Will Ospreay and loved wrestling Will Ospreay.
The
Will
Dynasty match.
Yeah, Will Ospreay is fantastic. Yeah. But what the person wrote was very in tune with actually what I was feeling in the match, which is this. The first 10 minutes of the match, they weren't reacting to what we were doing. They were just reacting because they were there. Seeing this thing. There was this like anticipation that this match was going to be awesome and they were there for this match that was awesome. But there wasn't like, so for example, they were cheering really loudly, but at a key maybe story point, they wouldn't react to the key story point. They were just reacting because they were there and it's awesome being there, right? And so and it really gets me like I know why I watched wrestling as a kid and why I continue to watch it now, but I don't know why new people and all of that to say, when I talked to, I just recently did a hike with Daniel Garcia and Wheeler Yuta, and Daniel, they're both in their 20s. And I was just like, what do you guys like in wrestling? Like, why did you guys watch it? Like, because they're closer to the fan spectrum than I am. I am at this point 25 years removed from being a fan. You know what I mean? And so it's like, I've watched it for different reasons. So all of that to say, I don't know why, some people hate watch things. Can you? I can't fathom it.
A lot of people do.
I can't fathom it.
Hate watch.
Yeah, like you watch something to criticize. And not even to criticize it like to my buddies, to criticize it online. I don't understand, right? And so I also, there's just so much I don't understand about some of this stuff. And so it's hard for me to understand kind of one of the things that, when Tony will ask me a question or when talent asks me a question, I always preface it by saying, you just have to keep in mind, I don't know what the hell is going on, right? I can give you my perspective on what I think, like, okay, this makes sense, this makes sense, this makes sense. But the world of entertainment, it's far, like, it's gone way over my head. I was just on a plane for 10 and a half hours. And I think I was the only person in my general area that read a book. Like, so I don't understand culture anymore, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand where everything's going and that sort of thing. So
With that being said, do you think it's harder then to be like a new wrestler now? The younger guys and girls coming through now, it's like, do they have to think of how wrestling is being consumed and putting their character together when, crowds are hate watching and reacting to things for reaction's sake? Is it harder?
And also attention spans.
So I do think it's hard, and I think it's hard for them to understand. For example, I was brought into wrestling learning the basics first, and then you expand on the basics. But when that was happening, you would see people on TV doing the basics. You don't see people, very, very rarely do you see people on TV now doing headlock, whip into the ropes, tackle, drop down, give a hip toss, come up, arm drag, hold the arm bar. You know what I mean? You don't see that kind of stuff now. One of the things that I think is really hard for talent now is, and especially if they're on social media, is everything that they do, people can see. There's no room, there's no place where you can just go and learn and make mistakes and not have people criticize you. It was so good for me to do all those Butlin shows. There were no internet reports of my Butlin's performances. Like, Bryan Danielson went out there as the American Dragon with a mask and sang the national anthem. I was so disappointed I didn't get to see cattle mutilation, right? I can't believe I paid for this weekend trip at Butlin's and I saw this, what a disappointment, and then people pile on, and then there's a gif of it, and then there's, all that kind of stuff of me doing something stupid. Like, they have to deal with that. And I hate to say they have to deal with it. It's a choice to get on social media, but it's hard when everybody else is doing it. And then the standard is that you get on social media to promote the things that you're doing. And there's also, I think there's a higher expectation. You have to, now, to be a top person, whether it be male or female, you have to be good at wrestling. You have to be good at talking. You have to have you have to look, at least you don't have to look a certain way. It doesn't have to be the bodybuilder physique that they expected 15 years ago, but you have to look a certain way. You have to have certain kind of gear, all that kind of stuff. It's a lot to put together, and it's not easy to put together all at once, so.
Yeah. Going to bring up a tough subject matter, if you don't mind.
No, I don't mind at all.
Feel free to say however much or as little as you want. But I just wanted your opinion on Vince, because when you left WWE, you did a really beautiful open letter to the sort of company and to the fans and to Vince. And I think you said something along the lines of, I wish the fans saw you as I see you. Mm-hmm. But then since everything that has come out, that must be tough for you.
Yeah, it's been, first and foremost, I want to say that people who have been hurt are in a way worse position than I am, right? My empathy goes to them, right? It's just there's not a lot I want to say about it, honestly, other than, it's just because it's not just the Vince piece. It's also my father-in-law and maybe ex-father-in-law, as far as like that kind of stuff goes. It's just, you think of somebody in some way, and then something happens and it changes, right? And that's always hard. So it's but like I said, as hard as that may be for me, like emotionally, like this emotional thing that I'm like, this or whatever, it's way worse for people who have been victimized by people in power, right? So,
and how have Nikki and Bree dealt with?
If they want to talk about it, they can talk about it. I don't like one of the, I think this should be a core tenet of everybody is to not, if somebody is willing to tell you their feelings of something that's really like hard, that it's not your place to tell everybody else, right? So yeah, if they want to talk about it, they can. That's not my jam.
Fair. Got to quickly ask you about CM Punk.
Okay.
Mex mentioned the disciplinary committee that you were part of in AEW. What's the relationship, given the fallout and everything that happened between Punk and AEW? What's your relationship like with Punk?
So I haven't spoken to him since before the decision was made. As part of the disciplinary committee, I was told it's best not to reach out to him because there's, any sort of thing like this, there's legal stuff. And I'm not a lawyer. I'm not even, I don't even have a college degree, right? So I just, so that's kind of the last. We had talked maybe, I want to say the week before All In last year is the last time that we talked.
Okay.
So maybe just a little bit before that.
Okay. Talk to me about your final ever opponent.
Yeah.
Why?
What do you mean?
Well, as in, what was the out of everyone you could choose to wrestle in what will potentially be your last ever match?
Swerve.
Why Swerve?
Oh, because he's fantastic. And I also, I had this.
Was there any kind of Washington bias?
Yes. I was just about to say that. So I've always had this desire for whenever I'm done wrestling to transfer that to a new Washington guy, right? Because
really?
Yeah, I've always kind of, because the reactions that I get in Seattle and and Washington and all that kind of stuff, I've always wanted to not be their guy anymore. I want them to have a new guy. I'm their old guy, but here's our new guy, and he's better, and
that's so cool.
And so it's so yeah, and and Swerve just has an incredible story. You know what I mean? He's one of the guys who he's just an incredible one. He's an incredible employee. All this stuff that he does for AEW, and he wants to do it, all that kind of stuff. Has a positive attitude all the time. The hard work that he brings, but also as a performer, both in the ring and as a character. The stuff he does outside the ring, he does all these incredible things. And I'm like, wait a second, you were on stage at this awards show or whatever it is, and I was like, how does that I can't even fathom, right? That's not the world I live in. So anyways, so yeah, I think he's fantastic, and if I'm gonna go out, that's, and also. It's not just him, although it is part him, but it's also the atmosphere of Wembley, right? There's not much left I have on my bucket list, right? That's one of them. So
Sunday, August 25th. Max, any final questions for?
Yeah, obviously
Brian?
we touched on the whole situation with Vince. On the flip side, what's it like working for TK? He isn't someone that has necessarily come from the business. He's been a fan. Traditionally, you have the promoters, which are born into the business or ex-wrestlers. So someone that's, I guess, on the other side of that spectrum, what's that been like?
Yeah, it's to me, it's been kind of refreshing a little bit. He comes with so many new ideas and ideas that I wouldn't have thought of, but also he's a real student of wrestling as far as he studies, past wrestling and all that kind of stuff. So it's been a lot of fun, the one thing is, that's hard is that Tony's super kind. He's a super kind human being. And I haven't had a boss like that. I had a great relationship with Vince, and I had a great relationship with Hunter. And when I was in Ring of Honor, I had a great relationship with Gabe Sapolsky. None of them were particularly kind, right? You know what I mean? They don't, in the sense of treating everyone nicely, all that kind of stuff, and that's been really refreshing and that sort of thing. So yeah, it's been fun. It's just been interesting and it's just been different, His mind works so fast, and my mind works slow.
But that's why you complement each other.
Yeah.
So if we're looking at this as your sort of retirement month, potentially, reflecting back on your career, whatever company it's in, what has been your proudest moment when it comes to sort of an in-ring moment or a night? Is there something that pops into your mind?
No, you know what's funny is all of this just seem like little specks, little moments in a lifetime, and that I'll just never understand, right? How did these things happen? Because I am a pretty average human being, right?
I wouldn't say that at all. Come on.
No. Like, as far as like athletically, like I'm pretty smart, but not like so smart. Like when you talk to people who are so smart, I was just having this conversation with somebody about how I don't understand gravity, right? Like, not Gravity the wrestler, Gravity the concept. You know what I mean? I can do all the mathematical formulas. I'm actually really good at math specifically, but I've been trying to teach myself physics, right? And so I'm going through like all the Feynman lectures, and they're describing gravity, and I can do all the equations and all that kind of stuff. But then it just gets to the point where I don't understand. Like, okay, so I get that gravity pulls us and keeps us, when we jump, we don't go into outer space, right? Mm-hmm. But I don't understand why. People will rip me apart on this whenever they see it. But that's why it's good I'm not on social media.
Yeah.
And that's why I can talk about these things, is because all of a sudden people will come up to me at work and be like, "Did you say that apples are tree semen?" And I was like, "It was just a joke." I wouldn't even, But anyways, I have these things that like I don't understand. Like, I don't understand why we go around the sun and not into the sun. Like, and I've read all these things, and that's just a very simple thing. I don't, they describe it, it's like a tether. Well, it's not really like a tether, because it's more like an ellipse. We cut really tight to the sun, and then we get slingshot all the way around, and then it pulls us back, but it doesn't pull us into it. It just pulls us vaguely closer to it, but then it slingshots us around. And why, after 4.8 billion years, have we not got into the sun? Or maybe we will. I don't know. But but with these things, all that to say, I'm not particularly smart. So I'm not particularly smart. I'm not particularly athletic. I wasn't very good at talking in front of people. Like, I was very shy. So there's all these things, and I just don't understand. I've had all these weird things happen that put me in these incredible positions, and they're just, like I said, they're just moments in a lifetime that I don't know if I'll ever understand. So,
wow.
But I think that's just life, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. That's not how I expected to end the interview, but I'm very
Talking
pleased.
about gravity?
I'm very pleased we went there. Bryan Danielson, thank you so much for joining us. So, All In, Wembley Stadium, Sunday, August 25th. Get your tickets, awtix.com or Live Nation UK. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you guys. It was fun.
Would you ever go back to WWE?
I mean, I would never say never, but it would have to be, if I would, it would have to be in a case where I felt like going there was better for the industry. So, for example, imagine in 10 years, all of a sudden something happened to their creative process, and they are just horrible, and AEW has completely taken over, and it's become a one-sided business on the other side, and yeah, then maybe I would consider it.
Okay,
but I love where I'm at now, and I'm also not under contract. Realistically,
Yeah.
I think I just want to be free. That's kind of, I just want to be free.
So a Hall of Fame ring is not enough to entice you back?
I mean, I have no interest in outside accolades. None whatsoever.
Wow. You're a special cat.
Or an idiot.
Let's go with special.
I'm a champion!